I've taken various bits and pieces off and have figured out more or less what goes on. You see little springs that go flying across the room if you're not careful. So the mirror is, by the looks of it, glued on to the back plate. It looks like there's some sticky double-sided tape maybe that's holding that on. The center spot is, I think it's a little blob of paint. I was considering, if it was paper, peeling it off with a needle and putting a proper ring binder on it, but I think that's not going to be possible. I might just have a little poke at that. Sharp instruments near mirrors are not advisable, but if I just take a little compass point and just it's either an adhesive plastic film or a blob of paint. I don't think I'm prepared to take that off. It might damage the mirror. So the way that fits into this contraption, I started undoing those screws, but found that they just got tighter and tighter because of course they were attached to the other ends of these, so it was pulling those downwards. But if the little springs go back on there, these will be the points where those screws, these little short screws, will press in there and there and there. For some funny reason, these are metal and that one isn't, which makes me think that there's a little metal disc that once upon a time used to live in there. But so that may be one of the reasons why adjusting that one didn't work too well, but it should be still alright. It just would mean that you'd have to push this screw would have to go down a little bit further, but that is a little bit of a hiccup. I don't know if these ones, no, they don't come out. They're certainly not going to come out by falling out, so where that one has gone, the one in there, is a little bit of a mystery. Anyway, if we take this, I'll clean this up later, just give it a little quick clean, but it's a bit nerve-wracking turning it over. I don't think it should fall off, but it's going to be positioned thus. So it's resting on the spring, so there's reasonable sort of flotation around in these directions. So the idea is then that when these are in position, all three, then you can tighten those up and it will adjust the orientation of the mirror in all of these directions. So when that then is, when it's collimated and that's perfect, then there's nothing to stop this from going downwards, which is where these chaps come in. Those will all be tightened up, and just to lock it so that it then doesn't drift about. So there's quite a lot of movement in all directions. It might be that when we started this last night, this was right down and all of these were cranked far too far downwards, so we weren't getting any wobble. because they certainly seem to be okay at the moment. So I'll pop those back in. There we go. That's going to be a problem. That's not going to fall out. And so there is one little hiccup that's going to appear, is that when we want to, attaching these, we'll put that on the back of the scope, tighten those all up. You can reach around to get the little nut on the back, get that all assembled, then assemble that, and it should be good to go. So next step, I'm going to clean it all up. There's a load of gunge and dust and things in here, which I'll clean all that out, and because that's only going to move and settle on the mirror when we put it all back together again. But that seems to be a job to do, and also to clean the dust off there. I usually use this as running a bit low, but first step is to, I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, if I was, don't know if I've got a spare canister. That's going to be as good as new. I don't think I need to worry about cleaning that anymore. Maybe just a little touch of isopropyl alcohol. There's a tiny little speck of something there. Let's just get I was doing this with another piece of equipment just the other day. So this is the isopropyl alcohol, and just to wet that. If the mark doesn't come off, it's a scratch. I know what you're going to say, you did that with the compass, but I can assure you I never went anywhere near it. There's a little blob. It might just a delicate touch with no pressure. I'm just using the weight of the little matchstick in there to keep the tissue rigid. There we go. And there was one here which was for drying. Yeah, that's where that speck was. That's come off nicely. If you huff on it, I find that it's better than isopropyl alcohol or any of the other things for getting off the faint little watermarks that get left behind. Now, if you just leave the huff, it disappears. So there's a little. You may not see it from the angle the camera is at the moment, but there's a tiny little mark there. There's a little hair, that I think a hairline mark here. Yeah, that's got something like solvent on it, I think, some sort of grease, or it could be a hair that you've got hairs can have oils and greases on it. I haven't yet ever scratched the mirror. I know, you were saying there's always a first time. Yeah, that mark is reluctant. It's pretty good. That little bit by the edge think that might actually be a little defect in the aluminium because it's not. And then there's one little watermark there. That's gone. Another one there. This is just purely for my own entertainment, because optically these little marks are not going to make the slightest bit of difference to what you can see. But there, if we look at that, I think we can see that's reasonably nice and clean. So, first job done. Clean the rest of it up and then see if I can get it back together again. The mirror's back in the mirror cell now, and I temporarily fitted these bits in. These are not in tight at all, but you can see now that there's my little pointer to show what's going on here. We can use this compass again. Here we go. When we looked at it at the club the other night, this plastic surround here was above the level of the plastic there. It was, if I push with my fingers, it was right out like that. And we were trying to adjust it, but clearly, if I push as far as it will go, that's it. That's the maximum. So it was, I think somehow these had all been turned so that they were at the maximum push. So that is why we could not. I mean, now you can see it's very easy by adjusting those. I'm using my thumbs. But if we imagine there's 3 screws pressing there, we can waggle that into every position. I'll use the official screws now, not my thumbs. And we can see this one is adjusting that. So there it goes up, and if we go the other way, there it goes down. Now we'll do that one. Up it goes, and down, and the bottom one, up it goes, and down. So the collimation now will be a lot easier to do. I don't think really that this little plastic surround does anything. You could assemble it without that and it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. I think that is there purely to stop in the event of that double-sided tape which attaches the mirror to the back plate. If that was to come loose, then of course the mirror would come flying out. So the only function of that is to stop it falling out. It does wobble about a bit as you play with these, but I think there we are. We've made a bit of progress. That should be a lot easier to collimate than it was before. The back part is now back onto the scope. Quite tricky holding the nuts in place there to do these screws, but you've got to balance it on your finger and kind of hope it goes in the right place. So the first thing will be to get these springs in place, thus. And then position the mirror cell in place here. There we go. Whoops. That's one. Two. Three. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off with one thing that's a bit annoying is that the head of this screw scrapes on this knurled nut. Those are all right. It might be an idea to whip this out and grind off the... I think it looks as if it might be asymmetrical. If we turn it around a little bit more. There it's quite free. No, this is not a good... I think it's a bit elliptical, that. I might grind a piece of that off. But now I think we'll take all of these out. There's no point in doing those just yet. So we'll remove those. I have a grindstone in the workshop, so we can take the edges off those and make it a bit easier. I have a plan. I'm going to put it on and then give it, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns. Put this one on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that will pull us in more or less the same amount. So we've got oodles of distance to go. And we don't want to get this in with one of them screwed far more than the others, because then you're starting off at a bit of a disadvantage. So that might be a plan. I'm going to go and grind those down just so that they rotate a little bit more smoothly next to the knurled nuts. There we go. Taken each one and just, I'm going to hold those against the grindstone very carefully, without it flying across the room and then it's lost. So I've just ground each of those round a little bit, so that should make it, when we pop them in here, I'm hoping that they will then rotate. They could have just made the space between those two just 2 millimeters more and you wouldn't have the problem. Right, let's have a go. Yeah, that's going in nicely. And that one. Remember, one of these hasn't got the little metal bottom to the doodah, so it won't go, or will go further in. And clearly that's got masses of space, so my 6 turns each was a little conservative. I might just measure how far each of the small ones sticks out and then get those all level. Right, they all look roughly level now. So if we now advance these, so is that, yeah, that one seems to be now making contact. And that one. Yeah, so now these should be tight. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll come back, we'll go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's quite a nice sort of positive feel to those. So I think we'll be in business. There's still, that's tight because these are tightened up, that's snugged up. Those 3, I think all these do is they screw into the backs of that little plastic ring. So these don't actually do a lot. No, so I don't want to go in. There we are, that one's in. Yep, come on, you little devil. One to go. And that one's been quite straight. So, giving a push there, that moves, this one doesn't. Yes, it does. Okay, there may need to be a little bit of fine adjustment on those, but we are getting places. I shouldn't think this is going to work, but the idea is that for it to be collimated, you have to, if you look absolutely down the center of this little tube, then you see the bright reflective surface of the mirror, and you also see the 4 veins there. And if you guarantee that your camera is looking through the very middle, then that central dot should be absolutely central. Now I've got this little device which is quite useful. Simple aluminium plug with a hole polished there to reflect some light, and that you put in there, and then you look with the eye, and I'm coming down and 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 down. Okay, now if I get, oops, it was there, where's it gone? There we go. So if I try and hold that in position, now if I reach to the back of the tube, now you can see the reflections there. So if I get everything concentric, then I'm looking down the middle of everything. Now if I very carefully rotate one, my left hand is now at the back of the scope. Fortunately it's a short scope, so we can look at both ends at the same time. Now if we watch very carefully, I rotate one of those little nuts. You see it going off to the side, so the wing come back again, like that. And try and hold the camera so everything's concentric. I'm not quite certain what that grey ring is an image of. But that one, you see, that one goes off to sort of 10 o'clock. 10:30, so we bring it back. Then if I reach one of the other ones, this one, making it sort of go a bit vertical. Obviously there's 120 degrees between them, and the one down at the bottom goes off in that direction, so it's a little bit hit and miss here. Difficult to keep. Well, with the eye, of course, you don't have the holding. I'm trying to hold the camera in the middle. Okay, but I think the general idea is visible here, that you've got to line up. So there it is, way off to the side. Bring it back to the middle. So that's how you adjust the bottom mirror. Now once that's done, you then go back to the rear end. You don't touch the big ones, these are the ones I was twiddling, but you snug those up nice and tight, and then go back to the other end, keep going backwards until it's centered and those are all tight. Then you can think about using the laser. The laser is only going to adjust to the 45-degree mirror, because the center dot is not reflective. We can't do the whole thing with the laser, but there we go. We're getting places, definitely. I've now taken the little secondary mirror off, and we can quite clearly see there's a little bit of a problem. So if you look at it from that direction, it looks like those 3 screws have been cranked inwards, and this little mirror housing is tilted over at quite a marked degree. Look at that from that side, so that is not the way it should be. So let's release all of these. In fact, you can see that if you look at these 2 screws, that one is protruding a lot higher than those. That one's in the furthest, and those 3, no, those 2 are looking a bit different. So if I loosen all three of them, I'm not touching the one in the middle, just the ones on the outside. So that allows you, once it's in position, if you loosen all three of those, you can rotate this around in this plane so that you can get the 45-degree angle. Sometimes there is a big spring placed in here, there to there, which makes this press outwards nicely. It tends to keep it aligned. I don't know if I've got a spring handy that would do that, but certainly it's a good idea to start out with all three springs being at the same position. Now, I'm not going to change that the position of the middle screw. There's another three little screws there, but I think those are only holding this thing in place, and then on the back there's a little clasp that holds the mirror in position, which means you lose a little bit of the mirror surface at the top there. This is a bit gungy. It has, because it's inside, it's very difficult to clean without taking it out, so I'll give that a little bit of a clean. Adjust these three. That one seems very, very stiff. It's just in a threaded plastic. This is plastic, so if you were not careful and you strip the thread in the plastic, you'd be in a little spot of bother. So I think, let's have a look if those are all, if we keep advancing these in so that they all look the same, nearly there. Another thing I do when I'm setting up a telescope is I have a little paper outline of an ellipse, and then I put two lines on it across, so that in the sweet spot, which is supposedly in the center there, in a large reflector, the sweet spot is not in the center of the mirror. It's actually offset to one side, but this is a tiny little mirror here. I don't think that offsetting that, it would be probably a fraction of a millimeter if it was offset, but I don't know how. Yeah, you can't rotate that. Once these three have been tightened up, you can't rotate this too easily, so that could be a bit of a hiccup, but at least we can see. I might just have a little look. I don't think I've got a spring that would sit in there, but it's worth a little investigation, and I'll also clean up the surface of the mirror. Now, I think this little camera is never going to show the dot that I can see very dimly unless we get it going. I wonder if it'll shine directly back into, it's up here somewhere. There we go. So it's reflecting back, missing the center mirror here completely. And if I the screen there, the back of the mirror. If I rotate this backwards and forwards with my fingers, I'm just rotating the mirror, I can get it, the red dot, there it's off to the left, onto the mirror, there it's over to the right. So I want to move it into this position because the focuser is there, so I want to get it in line with the focuser. Might not be possible with this, but the red dot is right up the top. It's above, it's completely off the mirror, which means that it's the top. That screw will move the laser up and down. I don't know if I can just do that gently. Right, the dot seems to be in the middle, and if I feel the secondary support, it's not rattling and loose. All three of these screws are reasonably tight, so I think we're okay. Now again, if the laser is waggled, you can see it moves, but it's reasonably snug. It's going to lose collimation very easily. Just tap the thing and it's going to waggle. A fancy secondary support will cost probably quite a few £100. So we would not expect this to hold its collimation for a very long time, but that, I suggest, is going to be good enough. Now, if we then go back, remove, turn off the laser. Where's the switch for the laser? There we go. Turn off the laser. Pop the little doodah in, and then creep downwards and see if I can make a judgment. Is the spider more or less in the center? Now I'm looking at the back of this little GoPro, and I'm looking at a mirror that looks about 3 millimeters across. So obviously if I zoom this in on the screen on a PC, I'll be able to see whether that is concentric. But looking down by eye, it looks pretty good. So there we go. Mission accomplished.